Right. I think we can probably get started. Mackenzie, if you want to share the screen. And we're excited to walk through the world of AI solutions out there, whether you're buying them, whether you're buying them or building them or doing something in between. So just to introduce ourselves, my name's Amir. I'm managing director here at BOI, and I lead our Americas region. And I'm joined by Mackenzie, who is a director here at BOI, and both of us sit out of our New York office. But we obviously are a global company working with different companies in different countries around the world. So for those that don't know BOI, we are very much focused on AI first transformation, and the majority of our work is with teams that are innovation teams, marketing teams, sales teams, and commercial teams. And we work across most major sectors. We've been around for 16 years in the space, and we're excited to show you a little bit of our learning on the buy and build side of things today. So for us, we're a neutral company. We're not affiliated financially with any of the AI vendors out there, and a big part of our work is working with clients to figure out, is this something that you should build? Is this something that you should buy? Is this something that you should buy and then build, or vice versa? So we've done quite a bit of thinking around what a good bought solution looks like, what a good built solution looks like. We've also built quite a bit of our own technology as well on behalf of clients, always IP that our clients own. So hopefully we are well qualified in sharing some of our learnings on what to look for and potentially what to avoid. So with that, I will kick it over to you, Mackenzie.
Thanks very much, and good morning, everyone. Great to see you all here, and I hope you're having a good morning, depending on if you're on the east, depending on where you are in the world, or potentially our evening. Let's start by setting the scene. AI has, as we all know, moved from innovation tech teams, R&D teams to the boardroom. It's now very much at the top of the strategic mandate. But what we see is, with thousands of vendors, endless potential solutions and opportunities, leaders are really under pressure to decide, do we buy ready-made tools or do we build our own? And our goal today is to really try and move beyond that binary, leave you with practical ways to assess what's right for your organization. And we'll discuss when buying wins and when building is the right approach, and how most companies we see and work with end up somewhere in between. So spend the next sort of 30-ish minutes sharing lessons from the field and a decision framework that you can actually use. To be clear, this isn't a set of instructions about how to build. Instead, think of this as a session or a conversation on how to make smarter, faster, and more sustainable AI investment decisions. So let's start by really reframing how we think about this question. The build versus buy dichotomy, usually thought of as either or. And we sort of think that traditional framing is actually outdated. It's a slightly outdated mental model for AI. And the reality is, we look at this as more of a continuum rather than a binary decision. At one extreme, a pure buy approach makes sense for simple, non-strategic problems. Things like a no-code chatbot that answers FAQs on your website. It might be quick and cost-effective, but it doesn't create a huge, lasting advantage. This type of adoption is quickly becoming table stakes, and you need it, but it doesn't set you apart. On the other extreme, a pure build approach, developing that proprietary software models from the ground up. We recommend that for the truly core business functions that really differentiate you from your competitors. It's, of course, more resource intensive and requires deep technical talent. But as you can imagine, the vast majority of companies live in between these two poles, and we call this a hybrid sweet spot. And that's where you blend the best of both worlds. You're blending the buy that's proven, reliable, fast to deploy, while building the parts that make your business unique and set you apart. So the key message really to start off with is to, if you are currently, to stop thinking in binaries. And the most effective AI strategies that we see exist on this continuum. So once you move beyond that binary, a new question really emerges, and that's the one that we'll focus on. And arguably, it's not should we build or buy, it's what parts of the solution should we custom build to create differentiation, and what parts can we buy to save time and money. That's how we want you to start thinking about your AI solutions. As a system made of components, you're not making a single yes or no decision. You're really strategically selecting the components that that accelerate your development and build value that competitors can't replicate. So this modular, composable mindset is really what separates teams from just experimenting with AI to those that really operationalize it successfully. So the decision isn't just about technology, it's also about focus, where to invest your limited time, talent, and capital. So let's start with the buy, the foundational layer to your AI strategy. And there are certain capabilities that every company needs, but that don't really create that differentiation. And these are what we would call commoditized services. Generic AI tasks that are essential but don't give you that competitive or lasting edge. So for example, a pre-trained large language model, it's secure, it's trained on a scale of data that almost no company has access to single-handedly, or a low latency speech to text model that might be trained on multiple languages and therefore can do translation. These are powerful, they're reliable, and they are available off the shelf. A second piece of that foundational layer is an AI platform. Big players like AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, they are scalable infrastructure, they're pre-built AI services, they offer MLOps tools, and they help you move significantly faster than if you were to develop these yourself. And so often buying some of these platforms is, in fact, almost always the right move, rather than reinventing infrastructure that's already been built for scale. The key idea is really that to build on top of these tools is almost always the right approach and likely to accelerate that time to value. So when you think about what to buy, we say it's better to focus on the standard, the proven, and the repeatable, the pieces that your team, that will enable your team to really focus on where they can differentiate. So then if that's what you're buying, what are you building? And this is where your competitive edge really lives. The build side of your strategy is where you take those generic building blocks and make them uniquely yours. It starts with unique data integration, which is connecting the systems directly to your internal data sources and processes. This is really your secret sauce, and it reflects how the AI interprets your reality rather than a generic one. And then there's the workflows and the user experiences. That's really making sure that AI fits seamlessly into how your teams actually work, whether that's a predictable dashboard for operations or a personalized assistant for sales reps. The use case, the user interface, and the integration matter. And finally, the proprietary models. In certain cases, algorithms trained on your company's own data are likely to outperform generic models. So, for example, a model trained exclusively on your inventory data to predict stockouts before they happen, that's a competitive edge that no off-the-shelf tool can replicate. So if buying gives you access, then building gives you the advantage. And when done right, your build layer becomes the core of your AI moat. And that's part that your competitors simply can't buy. So before you move forward with any AI project, before you select the vendor or hire a data scientist or start the pilot, you need to pause and ask one critical question. Is this AI solution a commodity, or is it a core competitive advantage? If it's a commodity, something every company needs and uses in the same way, you should lean heavily towards buying. Off-the-shelf tools, integrate efficiently, move on. If it's a core differentiator, if it's the heart of what gives you that competitive advantage, maybe it's something that touches your proprietary data, your customer experience, or your unique business model, then you should lean more towards building or at least customizing heavily. And it's important to say that this isn't a single question that you ask yourself once and then move on. This is something you'll revisit often, not only as the technology evolves, but also as your business priorities shift. And this mindset, we think, really helps you focus your efforts, building where it's likely to matter most, and avoiding wasting time trying to reinvent the strategic. Which leads us nicely into our next section, looking more at what the buy really looks like in practice. So when we talk about buying AI, what we're really talking about is AI as a service. And you might have heard of this term before. This is the cloud-based model that gives you access to powerful AI capabilities without the need for deep infrastructure or huge amounts of in-house expertise. And there are typically three sort of flavors that you might approach this in today. First, we have traditional SaaS platforms. These are, as you're all, I'm sure, aware, full-featured software tools that already have AI built in. So think of Salesforce Einstein as an example for customer insights, or a no-code or low-code marketing tool that's embedded with generative AI. You buy the product and AI comes built in. The second, APIs or SDKs. Here, you're buying a single capability that plugs into your existing system. So, for example, of course, OpenAI's API for text generation or Google Cloud Vision for image. You're buying a building block rather than the whole house. And then the third is the pre-trained models. So these are models where they've already been trained on massive data sets, and you can fine-tune them using your own data and deploy them in your own environment. And in many cases, fine-tuning does start to blur the line between building and buying. You start with something that's pre-trained, but then you're customizing it to your own needs and context. So the next time you're reevaluating or evaluating the buy option, remember, again, it's not one size fits all. The real question is how far you want or need to go in making your own solution that works for your unique context. And if we look at one of the more common ways organizations apply or adopt AI today, that would be buying SaaS. This means that an AI product or platform already has built, maintained, and continuously updated AI embedded within by the vendor. And these tools are designed for broad use cases, things like, as you'll have seen, customer support, potentially sales forecasting, or documentation summarization. And there are important trade-offs to acknowledge when buying AI as a service. First, you are inevitably bound by the product's existing roadmap. You're limited in terms of customization, and the product is the same product being used for everyone else. So it doesn't offer you that differentiation or that customization. And that's why it does typically become table stakes quite quickly. You also don't own the underlying model or the technology itself. So we also have seen a staggering number of AI vendors unable or potentially unwilling to tell you exactly how your data is stored or used. And that's something that we really recommend drilling down into. There's also an issue of vendor dependence. As your ability evolves, you depend on their ability to keep up. And of course, off-the-shelf systems inevitably might not fit perfectly with your enterprise data standards, your workflows. And of course, over time, there is a cost implication with subscriptions and licensing becoming very expensive at scale. All of that being said, there are, of course, some big advantages here too. Most obviously is speed. You're getting access to a ready-made system that can be implemented quickly, often in a matter of weeks, which might not necessarily need a huge amount of internal expertise to get up and running. Since you're not building from scratch, as I say, you need less of that in-house expertise, and you're paying a upfront subscription fee, which makes the investment clean, clear, and easy to manage. And because the vendor manages the ongoing maintenance, your team internally is hopefully freed up from handling the operational side. So SaaS can be an excellent starting point for when you need a quick solution, but it's not that long-term substitute for competitive strategy. So then there's some trade-offs. I've already talked about them a little bit, but to recap, the advantages are clear. Speed to market, you can deploy meaningfully quite quickly, lower upfront costs, and of course, managed maintenance. But there are those downsides: limited differentiation, a risk of vendor lock-in, and of course, you're potentially handing over valuable information to an external provider, and which introduces risks, but also requires that strong due diligence up front. So buying is not an easy shortcut that it sometimes appears to be. It's very much a strategic choice that trades control and uniqueness for speed and simplicity. So let's look quickly at the other side of the spectrum. Building doesn't mean doing everything from scratch. It's really about creating or something custom that differentiates your business. And there's sort of two main paths, and we can think of them as lanes on a highway. On the left lane, you build in-house. You recruit, you hire, you manage your own full-time AI team. It's a long-term, high investment path, but of course, it gives you total control from start to finish. In the right lane, you build with a partner. You work with an experienced firm like BOI to design and deliver the solution collaboratively. This path gets you to value faster with less risk and upfront cost. Both lanes lead to the same destination, a custom-built AI capability, and that's strategic and, of course, unique to your organization. Building doesn't mean that you're going at it alone, and most successful companies do blend internal ownership with external expertise. So let's drill down into these two lanes quickly. The first is building in-house. This approach makes a lot of sense when AI is truly central to your business model, when it's part of your long-term strategy, your core competitive advantage. It looks like dedicated full-time teams of data scientists, ML engineers, data engineers, supported by infrastructure that runs and maintains your models. It is a significant ongoing investment. Of course, you're not just paying those salaries, but you're paying for all of the technology underlying that. And we know that these are more risky investments when going completely solo. We have things like talent scarcity with limited top talent. We have high costs, both upfront and ongoing. And we have a time to value with projects often taking a lot longer than expecting. And of course, not all of them succeeding, with meaning that ROI can be delayed or uncertain. So this path really works best for organizations with mature data strategies, more deep budgets, and a commitment to continuous AI innovation and adoption as a strategic pillar rather than as a side project. The second lane, on the other hand, the one that we see the most companies choosing, is building with a partner. And this allows you to achieve the benefits of a custom AI build without the risks associated with going in-house completely. A good partner brings several advantages. The first is that immediate access to expertise. You gain an experienced multidisciplinary team that's ready to start on day one. The second is that reduced risk and faster time to value. Partnering with experienced firms brings proven methods, best practices, and experience from doing this time and time again, helping you avoid, the common pitfalls and move the idea to prototype and then production quickly and reliably. And then finally, you can focus on the core business. Your internal teams stay focused on their mission while your partner handles the heavy lift from the technical side. So whether you partner with BOI or anyone else, there are two non-negotiables that we think make for extremely successful partnerships. And the first is IP ownership. You should always retain full ownership of your data and the IP of your final solution. And the second is about knowledge transfer. The goal of a partnership isn't dependency, it's empowerment. And a good partner ensures your team operates or learns to operate and evolve the solution after delivery. This is the model that we use at BOI, co-creating solutions that really combine your strategic insight with technical execution, giving you the IP and the knowledge to have full ownership of that solution. So we've covered both the sides of the build and buy continuum, what to build, what to buy, and how to approach each path strategically. And in short, there's no one size fits all. It really does depend on your data, your talent, and your goals, and where AI fits into your competitive advantage. So to help you assess that clearly, Amir is going to take you through the internal AI assessment, a framework to help you evaluate your readiness and make the right decisions for you. So with that, over to you, Amir.
Awesome. Thanks, Mackenzie. I'm going to share my screen here. So let me make sure you can see that. All right, perfect. So what we're going to do is kind of get tactical. So if you are considering an AI project, if you have something in mind, if you are assessing solutions, if you are assessing SaaS solutions, or potentially hiring a build partner or building yourself, what we're going to do is share with you what we found to be the most effective kind of checklist in terms of what you need to know, what you need to ask. I think importantly, what you need to document as well. It's obviously a big responsibility when it comes to picking an AI partner as a relatively nascent space when it comes to wider adoption. So this is going to be a kind of a tactical look at what you need to know, what you need to ask, and what you need to document as well. So everything we've talked about so far, buying, building, partnerships, technology, it's really grounded in decision making. So there are I'd say four questions that we kind of use as a quick stress test for any AI initiative. And what they do is they force you to just be really honest about what you're trying to achieve and what you're actually capable of doing. So the first one is obviously ROI. We always start here. A lot of AI projects do get launched with a lot of energy, but oftentimes with no defined success metrics. So the reality is if you can't articulate what a positive outcome of your AI solution looks like, whether that's reduced manual time, better decision making, higher accuracy, more intelligence, then you really can't call it ROI. So sometimes the return is financial, sometimes it's operational, sometimes it's strategic, like creating a data advantage, but it does need to be explicit. Otherwise, you're just experimenting without an anchor, basically. Second question is important. Do we have the talent? Even if you do decide to buy, then you still need some level of technical depth in-house. Someone has to own the integration, someone has to manage the vendor, someone has to, most importantly, I think, ensure that the tool actually fits your workflows. There's a huge change management aspect that can sometimes be missing when it comes to off-the-shelf AI solutions in particular. So for those that want to build, the talent bar actually rises pretty dramatically. So you can sometimes be talking about machine learning engineers, data engineers, ML ops, etc. I think the worst mistake is assuming that you can build because you've got engineers already or data scientists already. Building AI well does require a specific kind of orchestration. Third question, is this a core competency? We talked about this just now a little bit, but it's really what separates a strategic investment from ultimately a distraction. So is this capability central to your competitive edge? For example, pricing intelligence, if you're a retailer, or fraud detection for a bank, then it obviously makes sense to own it. If it's a background function, like, as we said, document search or customer chats, queries, then it's probably not worth reinventing something that the market has already solved. And that's when buying wins. And then finally, do we have the data? And most importantly, will security let us use it? So data readiness is kind of where the reality really hits. Building can become slow and expensive if your data is scattered and hard to access. But if you do have proprietary data, whether it's structured or unstructured, if it's of high quality, then building does become really powerful. So don't overlook your internal security team. They often are the folks that really determine whether a project gets approved or not. And I think that more AI ideas are kind of, the obstacle is governance rather than technical challenges. And it's a very legitimate obstacle that needs deep consideration. So these four questions, ROI, talent, core competency, and data, kind of the foundation of what we consider to be the buy versus build, and then the spectrum in between decision. I won't spend too long on this, but once you've clarified your position, a really well-designed experiment is kind of what's key. So once you've gone through those four questions, you think about, how do I design a proof of concept or a pilot that is going to de-risk execution in the best way possible? Obviously, a lot of folks want to go straight to scale. Scale is important. Building the scale in mind is important, but without the proof, it usually doesn't end well. So a pilot project is about focus, and it's your controlled test environment. It'll give you evidence on whether this AI solution, whether it's a build or a buy, actually works technically, whether it fits operationally, and whether it delivers measurable value. So the point of a pilot isn't obviously to stay small forever, but it is to generate confidence and clarity. So learn where your data breaks, where the workflows could potentially resist change, and whether people actually use the thing. It is important with a pilot to define the boundaries. So choose a measurable problem, choose a narrow problem. Things like predicting churn for a single customer segment is a good place to start, or automating, let's say, a small set of invoices. Remember, the goal isn't perfection. The goal is to prove out a set of predefined hypotheses. So a good pilot should essentially tell you three things. It's, can this technology work here? Do we have the right internal setup to support it? And should we buy or build more of it? So it turns those assumptions into actual data points. So we'll run you through what we consider our non-negotiables checklist. And this is kind of about protecting yourself once you've decided potentially which direction you want to go. So these are the non-negotiables, the things that should never be left open-ended or vague in an AI engagement. Again, whether you're building or buying or partnering or something in between. So the 5 non-negotiables are data and security, IP, tech and operational considerations, business and relationship and cost implications. And we'll do a little breakdown of each of these so that you've got more detail on what to ask and what to document. So when we talk about AI, it is really easy to focus on the models and the features and the functionality, but the real foundation obviously is data and security. And it's often the first gate that your AI initiative is going to face internally when it comes to risk and compliance and legal teams. So if this part isn't really airtight, it doesn't really matter how impressive the model or the features or the functionality or the software actually is. So the key question here is, I think, pretty simple. Can we trust this solution with our data? That includes where it's stored, how it's processed, whether it stays within your control. So imagine a financial services company exploring a third-party model for fraud detection. If that vendor can't really clearly state where transaction data is hosted or how it complies with things like data residency laws, then that's obviously a deal breaker, not just a detail. Certifications can really matter here. It's not just about the logos, but they do indicate maturity in handling risk ultimately. So a sophisticated vendor should be able to articulate their security posture, their incident response, encryption practices, audit policies, and they should be able to do that really without hesitation. Another important requirement, will our data be used to improve your models, whether they're public or private? The answer should be an immediate and clear no in almost every case. And some vendors will bury this in their terms. We've seen quite a lot of cases of this publicly in the media in the last year. So you want assurance that your proprietary data won't become someone else's competitive asset. And also remember that security is more than protection. It's operational clarity. If a model goes down, who responds? If data has to be purged, can they do it? If regulators audit, can the vendor prove compliance? So the message really here is, before you get excited about the capability, make sure you've got real certainty on controls. If data and security aren't guaranteed, then really everything else is optional. Next up is IP. It's often pretty misunderstood when it comes to AI projects. It's not just who owns the code, it's about who owns the capability and who owns the outcomes. So when AI is becoming core to business strategy, ownership ultimately becomes power. So the distinction is, are you buying a tool that someone else owns, or are you building an asset that you'll own? Typically in SaaS, the vendor owns the platform and you're effectively renting it, which is fine for commodity functions, as we said. But if AI is really critical to your business model, then you do need clarity on whether you control the outputs or the models or the transformations, the data transformations. Another layer is pre-existing frameworks. Most partners bring accelerators or internal libraries. That's not a problem, but you do need a boundary and understanding on what belongs to them and what belongs to you at delivery. And as Kenzie said earlier, knowledge handoff is really important as well. So if a vendor walks away, do you lose your competitive learning? There are scenarios where vague IP terms can cost millions. Next category is tech and operational. Just do a quick time check here. All right. So tech and operational, really anyone can demo an AI feature, but the key question is, can they run it? Can they scale it? Can they maintain it over time? And that's what separates ultimately a vendor from a partner. So something that we always ask vendors is, show me your life cycle. How do you deploy? How do you monitor? What's your process when performance drifts? A model that is 90% accurate today can be 60% accurate in 6 months if it isn't maintained. So if they can't articulate how they manage things like drift and bias and retraining and uptime, then they're ultimately selling a static product in what is realistically a very dynamic environment. So think about how systems adapt. Think about how they degrade. A mature partner will usually talk about things like pipelines, retraining, observability, rollback, etc. So the key message is, it's not enough just for an AI solution really to work. It has to keep working. Again, whether you're buying it, whether you're building it, whether you're partnering, whether you're doing a combination of all the above, it has to have a plan in place to keep working, not just be a sales demo on a call. So don't just ask what it does, ask how it's going to stay healthy, basically after launch. And then last one here, I think, is the business, or second to last one is business and relationship. So I think this is probably the most underestimated of the categories. AI is not like most other types of software that we've seen. It isn't just a product purchase. It's often a relationship with the partner, with the technology, and it's a relationship that can either accelerate transformation or actually do the opposite and completely stall it. So you do need your partner to be aligned with the business goals of the solution from the start, which means they're not just asking for data, they're asking about adoption, they're asking about workflows, they're asking about success metrics. They should be able to discuss the ROI in terms of the details. So time to impact or churn reduction or whatever it may be that you're tracking. So one of the big questions here is what happens after you go live. As we talked about just now, AI is not like ERP. You don't just configure it once and walk away. You need to know, can these partners train your teams? Do they offer support beyond just bug fixing, like retraining and reviews and roadmap alignments? A really, really big one is vendor lock-in. We hear this becoming a pretty big problem now that I think AI has been widely adopted for long enough that folks have seen what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and we are starting to see people move out and away from specific solutions, especially off-the-shelf solutions that may have been either too rigid or they may have dramatically increased in cost from the initial kind of trial offer. So do watch out for vendor lock-in. Good partners will have an exit path designed for you. I think less cooperative partners will end up ultimately entangling you. So for example, ask about data exports. Can things like your model weights be transferred if needed? Can the logic be transferred? If the answer is vague, then that's probably intentional. So really look out for that. Think about the tone. Are they educating? Are they selling? Are they challenging you as well, which is a good thing? Are they warning you of risks? Are they treating your long-term ownership seriously? And do they understand whether this is an AI problem to solve or just a traditional software or even just a governance or strategic problem to solve? One of the things that we say a lot when we speak with folks is AI is not the solution to everything or even most things. There's a lot of challenges that people bring to us that we say, actually, we don't recommend AI for this. Here's another way of solving this problem. So make sure that your partner, again, whether you're buying, building, or partnering, is challenging you on that. And then last one here is obviously an important one. It's the cost, the pricing. AI can be deceptive. A lot of solutions can appear affordable upfront, and I think sometimes if it's too good to be true on pricing, it probably is too good to be true. AI can become expensive once usage scales or once data volume and retraining enter the picture. So this isn't so much about the price, it's more about the predictability. So make sure you understand the pricing model in terms of subscription or usage-based or project-based or hybrid. Usage-based can sound flexible, but if you're processing a lot of documents or generating millions of tokens, the spend can spike really unexpectedly. So I've seen many companies spend more on API calls than they have on the original SaaS solution or build. Ask about hidden costs, data storage, retraining, supports, SLAs, etc. Think about scalability. Obviously, if adoption is successful, what happens to the cost when 100 users becomes 500 users or 1,000 users? Is there a path to renegotiate? Are you locked into a multiplier effect contractually? And then look at the total cost of ownership as well. So over 2 to 3 years, how does buying compare to building? Sometimes building is more expensive upfront, but cheaper over time. Sometimes buying is cheaper initially, but can limit flexibility later. So this is really about ensuring that AI strategy remains ultimately financially sustainable as it succeeds. Otherwise, costs can really become an exponential issue. So those are the 5 non-negotiables that we talked through. So data and security, IP, technical process, relationship alignment, and cost. And these are really what we think separates a smart, intentional buying decision from a reactive buying decision. So if you cover those 5 bases, then you should be able to walk into and walk away from any AI conversation confident that you're protecting your business, your function, your data, and your future flexibility. So think of this framework not just as a buying checklist, but an enterprise safeguard. And we'll share out this framework as well and this checklist too. So a couple of key takeaways. 1, there's rarely such thing as a pure buy or a pure build. Know that you are going to end up somewhere in the middle of these things. It can be easy to get bogged down in the buy or build, but it's kind of a red herring. The decision is, where do you sit in that spectrum? It's not which one of these do you pick. Competitive advantage is going to come ultimately from what you own, your proprietary work, and what you customize. Buying a SaaS solution is great if you are focused on those non-business critical elements. If you are really looking at AI to build a competitive advantage, then it's much harder to do that with buy, and you are likely going to end up mostly building the solution. And then use a framework. Don't just trust your guts when it comes to choosing a vendor. So we've got through a lot today. I don't know that we'll have too much time for questions, but I do want to see if we can get to a couple with the time that we have. So I'm opening the Q&A box here.
Thanks for that, Amir. As you were talking, I was having a quick read through the Q&A, and there was one question that I might jump in on, if I may. The question is, are there ways that I can build something internally as fast as partnering with a vendor? And I think that's a really good question, and it's one we've heard a few times. The short answer is you can move fast internally, but only if you have an extremely narrow scope, drastically narrower than you probably think you need. When it comes to sort of speed with AI, it's not just writing the code, it's really about removing friction. And vendors are fast inherently because they have already solved for infrastructure, compliance, and model access. So if you really want to match that pace in-house, then you need to recreate those conditions. And so that means focusing on a very specific, very well-defined use case using pre-trained models, building on existing cloud infrastructure rather than starting from scratch. So you're not trying to reinvent a full solution, you're trying to prove value quickly. You could call this sort of a minimum viable intelligence model. Stand up a small internal prototype using your own data, validate the outcome, and then decide if it's worth scaling. So it is possible for internal teams to move at some speed, but only when they very much control and limit the ambition to start with. But I wanted to answer that question, Amir, because I think it speaks to a slightly broader question that I think we've both heard many times, which is really about how do we advise leaders who are under pressure to do something with AI quickly, but they haven't got that AI strategy. We've got to do something, but we're not sure what. And I think this is a really important question that feeds into the bigger topic of build versus buy, because the first thing I'd say is that actually pause the urgency and do or focus on the right thing. When we see leaders feeling that pressure, we want to shift them away from kind of activity to intent and clarify what it is that they want to use AI for before deciding how best to use it. So at BOI, Amir's talked about using a framework rather than gut instinct. And what we like to do is start by mapping the company's key business challenges, not just AI use cases, but genuine pain points and growth opportunities. And then we explore where AI could be the unlock of measurable value, whether that's efficiency, decision quality, or revenue potential. And then from there, we can build out sort of a strategic roadmap, whether that's a small series of focused pilots or assumption testing, hypothesis testing. And that's how you move from that sort of hype-driven decision to value-driven decision. And again, will very much guide the direction and approach when it comes to the adoption of AI from build to buy. So really, it's that building and confidence throughout, rather than, or building of confidence throughout, rather than sort of the gut reaction that we do see sometimes when people feel that pressure.
Yeah, and I think you answered another question in here around the many vendors out there that are reaching out to everyone. So how to make sense of all of these new players coming out? And I think the answer to that, or one of the answers to that, is starting with your own challenges. So we always recommend that people spend the time identifying what their existing business challenges are, not their AI challenges, what they're actually trying to solve as a business, what they're trying to solve in their role, deconstruct that into why they are struggling to solve it, what are those underlying obstacles. And then once you've kind of mapped out and articulated those obstacles, then you can start to say, are there AI solutions that solve this specific thing? I think there's too much out there to solve it outside in. It needs to be kind of an inside out job. All right, I think we're coming up on time here. So great questions from everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We hope that it's been helpful, and we're looking forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.